Ooh, you actually have two online lectures today. This one from me, and then one from Mr. Trauber that's going to fit kind of in the middle where we talk about what deindustrialization looks like. But first, we need to clean up some stuff on market-oriented industries. I said basically bulk gaining industries are market-oriented, meaning they're going to be closer to the market or the cities where people buy them. Other market-oriented industries are things that are perishable or time sensitive. So newspapers or bread or something like that needs to be near the market no matter what, because if you keep it near the resources and have to ship it in, it's going to take a lot longer. Obviously, this has changed with space-time compression or refrigerator trucks, etc. Other things we need to know is the idea of a single market industry. These are uh, these are these are industries that sell things only to producers. They only do one thing, like zippers and buttons and car parts, and then they sell them to producers who then sell them to the customers. This is so we can have things like just-in-time delivery or quick access to car parts from like O'Reilly's. We had a commercial for the other day. So these are things that go to the market or the industrial centers, but they only do one thing. Zippers, buttons, great example. There are some transportation effects on industry, right? Obviously, things have changed, and it matters what your land looks like or what infrastructure you have. So if you have a lot of railroads, you're sitting pretty, but if you're not, you're stuck with trucks or boats or planes. So things you need to know. Trucks, they are best for short-term delivery, things within a day. Things are easy to get onto trucks, things are easy to get off of trucks, right? You just park it, pull it off, good, bang, bing, bang, boom. Trains are the best for multi-day delivery. Trains are actually very efficient in the way they work. So if you need something that it can, it needs to go a long, long distance, a train is the fastest and most efficient way to get it there. Ships are the cheapest over long distances because they can carry so much. Think of those huge container ships. They're just very slow. Not only do they have to go around the world or around the ocean, they're hard to unload and load, and then they go to different areas. So they're cheaper, but slower. Air is the most expensive. It's best for small loads, but it is by far the fastest. That's why FedEx has planes and stuff like that. And then there's one that you should consider, which is pipelines. Pipelines are how we move liquids in mass from one place to another. Like there's a pipeline coming from Canada to the United States now that pumps oil, and we do consider that a transportation, a form of transportation as well. So depending on what transportation you can get going, I have like an eyelash sticking out. Get going, you're going to have different locations for your markets. A really important vocab word is called a break, a bulk point. It's a place where transportation two transportation points meet and they transfer onto a different thing. I would not even think of another example other than when China sends goods over here on one boat. They might be from different companies. They might send them in different containers, but they all go on one boat. Then they get to the port and the different trucks might pick them up and send them to different areas. So we break up the bulk transport of those boats. So we save time coming from China because we're all using the same boat. We don't have to do separate shipping. But then we put them on trucks. So we ship the expensive way for as little as possible. Those are called break of bulk points. Cool. Okay, so what might make an industry be in a place is what we've been talking about. Now we're going to talk about what might make an industry move. So the inputs for an industry can change. If it's cheapest to be near the forest, well, what happens if the forest burns down? You're going to have to move your factory or your industry over. This actually happened in the United States, where the steel industry moved. It was in the United States. We had the most steel, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. We had all this steel up here, and then we just straight ran out of iron ore. And in fact, most everyone ran out of iron ore. We were pulled most of it from the world as a resource, and now steel is coming from scrap iron or old iron that we recycle and make into new iron. And most of that ended up in China. So now China is the primary distributor of steel because they had all that extra steel lying around. And so the factors of situation, when we talk site and situation, changed in that case. Also, markets can change. Maybe you want to be, especially if you're in a bulk gaining industry, you need to be close to the people. Well, a lot of people used to live on the East Coast and slowly they've been moving west, right? So you have to be closer to people. Or let's say Mexico opens up a market as they're getting more effective as a newly industrialized country, an NIC. Now they have a market for cars. So those those plants and auto industries might shift a little bit. They want to be closer to Mexico, closer to the West Coast, so they might move in a bulk gaining industry. Um, there are some site factors. This is not really Weber. Weber is not really all about this, but he takes into account labor and agglomeration. But land is also important. Well, you want to have your stuff somewhere where land is cheap and there aren't a lot of taxes, and you're going to have lots of labor, and you have easy access to inputs. So you want really good roads or railroads or infrastructure. Infrastructure is really important to a factory. If you can get your parts shipped in, well, you don't really need to be close to the resource because you're just going to get them, across a canal or whatever. Maybe they float them down. And then energy is a new important source. Being able to source your own energy, especially when a lot of plants are going solar, we're not going to find a lot of plants in Alaska where half of the year there isn't the sun, right? So energy is becoming incredibly important. Also, and this was a Weber idea, agglomeration. It is a good thing to be near other companies doing the same thing you are, because all of the infrastructure that people are building for those places you can take advantage of. It could be for accessibility of money, right? Capital, we call that. Maybe certain areas are more likely to loan money to certain agencies. It could be for tax regions. Have you noticed that all the movies today say made in Georgia? Well, Georgia reduced the taxes on movies, so now everyone does their movies there. So now they all get to use the movie sets and what do you call it, like the studios. And so now it's cheaper to go there, and so everyone does their movies there. There are also education blocks. There are places that are just more educated, and if you would like educated workers, well, um, you should put your industry there. So those are some site factors. A really interesting fact: somebody asked today during the study session where are agglomerations of tech besides San Jose and the Bay Area. One is actually in North Carolina. It's called the Research Triangle, and it's because there are all these really good research schools here that they just kind of set up shop near. Sorry, those research schools, and those are called a growth pole. It's right up here for the definition. A growth pole is an industrial hub that attracts other industries and workers for development. So because they had such good education, well, then all these research areas came in. And because all these research areas came in, well, now all these stores are going to show up. And because all the stores show up, well, now people are going to want to, I don't know, go bowling or something after they shop. So it's kind of like these areas grow the rest of the city with their success. Cool? And finally, labor. Labor is the biggest site factor when determining where a industry or industrial built factory might be. And cheap labor is what people are looking for. Generally, this is one of the higher costs. In a more developed country, the average manufacturer wage is $35 an hour. In an LDC, it's 35 cents a day. So of course you're going to put your manufacturing plant where you have the cheapest labor. And so that also is a pull to location. Also safety standards and taxation. You're not going to go somewhere where you have to, where there's a lot of taxes if you can avoid it, because you don't want your workers to have to also pay taxes, and then you can pay them less because they don't have to pay taxes. And safety issues, like if you have to pay extra for safety stuff, well, wouldn't it be better to do it in Taiwan where you don't have to do that? So those would be the biggest site factors in where your stuff goes. Let's see, we have just a couple things to get through. A footloose industry is just an industry that's not tied to site and location. They don't have that many inputs. Think computer chips. Think like idea centers. They could be anywhere, right? It doesn't really matter. But there aren't that many of those. Not super important. You just know that it's a footloose industry. All right, skilled labor is where we end off. Brownfields. Here's where we want to go today. We want to go. Actually, let's just end it there. So watch that other video. We're going to talk pollution tomorrow.